A good part of the slowing likely reflects a decline in the growth of the labor force due to lower immigration and labor force participation, though labor demand has clearly softened as well. Although official employment data for September are delayed, available evidence suggests that both layoffs and hiring remain low, and that both households' perceptions of job availability and firms' perceptions of hiring difficulty continue to decline. In this less dynamic and somewhat softer labor market, the downside risks to employment appear to have risen in recent months. Inflation has eased significantly from its highs in mid-2022, but remains somewhat elevated relative to our 2% longer-run goal. Estimates based on the Consumer Price Index.
Donald Trump's efforts to put blinders on the Federal Reserve, to put them in a black box, to deny them data about jobs, about the economy, about inflation, all backfired because the Federal Reserve took one look with private data that they accumulated about consumer spending, about job creation, about pricing, and said, this Trumponomics is crushing Americans, and we need to rush into the burning building, and we need to fix it. So the Federal Reserve, led by its chairman, Jay Powell, Donald Trump's been trying to get rid of, and by Lisa Cook, who still has her job on the Federal Reserve despite Donald Trump's efforts to fire her, they voted in a group of 12 to cut the interest rates again today to try to bail out the failing Trump economy. They cut it by 1/4 point. The Trumpers joined in the vote. I'll tell you who dissented and why this matters here on Legal AF Wednesday. What Jay Powell at the Federal Reserve and the rest of the Federal Open Markets Committee does matters. They run the monetary policy. The president, whoever that is, runs or tries to run the fiscal policy, the trade policy. And then the Federal Reserve tries to take a look at that, see how that's doing, looking at its normal measures like consumer confidence, consumer spending, jobs and job growth. How's the economic engine of the economy doing? How are we doing on tariffs? How are we doing on inflation? And they have two goals that have been set by Congress for the Federal Reserve. One, have a lot of jobs, so unemployment low, and keep inflation low. High jobs, low prices. Sometimes they're in tension, right? Because the more people are working, the more their wages, the more income that they obtain, sometimes prices go up. And so they balance that friction, that tension with the blunt force instrument of interest rate adjustment because they control the rate. Banks charge other banks for lending, and that kind of cycles through the economy and impacts your interest rate and my interest rate for consumer debt, credit cards, student loans, mortgages, and the like. Until today, that interest rate, which was already reduced last month because they all took one look at the data and was like, wow, the Trump economy is doing terribly. We better help out and lower interest rates and get some free money into the system. They had already lowered it 1/4 point last month. They took one look and said, no, 4.1% is not going to do it. We got to lower it below 4. We got to bring it down to 3.9%. And 10 out of the 12 members of the Federal Open Markets Committee did exactly that. The 10 included the chairperson, Jay Powell, who's in his job until May 2026, at least as the Federal Reserve chairperson, and Lisa Cook, who Donald Trump tried to fire for quote-unquote mortgage fraud, but the Supreme Court said, yeah, hold off. We'll take a look at that in January. So she got to vote again. She's going to get to vote next month too. Now, the only two that voted against, one voted for an even deeper cut. Guess who? Right. Stephen Miron, who's on a leave of absence from the White House as the chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors. He's a Trumper through and through. He's here on a loaner temporary basis, and all he ever does is push for lower rates. The last time he also voted, not just because let's be candid, he had insider knowledge about how the economy's doing from the White House's perspective, and he wanted to hit the emergency brake. He's like, we gotta cut this by a whole point. Well, they're like, what numbers are you looking at? Oh, trust me, things are bad. So again, he voted for a deeper cut than the rest of the vast majority, 10 out of 12. So he voted for a 0.5 point instead of a 1/4 point cut. And Governor Schmid, he looked at the numbers and he goes, 0, let's just keep it flat. But they vote by majority, almost always in unison, except when you get the Trumpers on there. Now, there are 2 Trumpers on there, or 2 Republican appointees. One is Bowman and one is Waller. They are part of the 7-member Board of Governors, which is comprised of Jay Powell, Lisa Cook, Bowman, Walker, and then a whole other, another group. Right now, it's 4-3 non-Trumpers, non-Republicans, 4-3. That's why Donald Trump wants to get rid of Lisa Cook so he gets control of the 7-member Board of Governors. Now, the 7-member Board of Governors come together with 5 others from the regional presidents of the regional Federal Reserve banks, which rotate. And 5 plus 7, we get 12. 12 get in a room. They therefore form the Federal Open Markets Committee, and then they vote by majority. But if Donald Trump gets control of the Board of Governors, he can fire all the presidents of the regional banks, putting his lackeys in place. So now he's got 1 vote getting rid of Lisa Cook. He picks up the majority on the Open Markets Committee to set rates whatever he wants. And even MAGA Republicans, including those that are in the running for Donald Trump's replacement for Jay Powell, have said whenever a dictator or a president gets control of the monetary policy, it spells disaster, hyperinflation. Because the president, especially Donald Trump, is on a short time horizon. He wants to just improve his economy with a short jolt, almost like a drug, like a bump, in order to make the numbers look good in time for an election, but leaving the country in dire straits once his term is over. That's why you don't want the same guy in the presidency cooking the books on the numbers and the statistics, and then the monetary policy. See, one of the theories about why Donald Trump has waited this long to settle the shutdown is he wanted to get over this next rate cut. And he wanted to deny the Federal Reserve all of their inputs from the government standpoint, from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, like job numbers and unemployment numbers and spending numbers, and see if this, and then let them at sea without a sextant or a compass try to find the North Star. Now they found it. And what they figured out, the economy's terrible. We all know that. Go to the local supermarket and try to go shopping with last year's money in your pocket and see what happens. Try to buy meat, try to buy coffee, try to buy fruits and vegetables. Good luck. Good luck. So we're going to continue to follow it. Now, what also freaked out the market is that Jay Powell's a cautious guy. And here's what they said in their Open Markets Committee statement, which I'm going to read to you now, and I'll post it up. Available indicators suggest that economic activity has been expanding at a moderate pace. Job gains have slowed this year. The unemployment rate has edged up. Most recent indicators are consistent with these developments. Inflation has moved up since earlier in the year and remains somewhat elevated. It's the highest jump in inflation in 40 years, Jay. I know you like to be cautious. In support of its goals and in light of the shift in the balance of risk, the committee decided to lower the target rate for federal funds rate by 1/4 point to 3.75 to 4%. So anywhere between 3.75 and 4. So let's say 3.9. In considering additional adjustments to the target range for the federal funds rate, the committee will carefully assess incoming data. The committee decided to conclude the reduction of its aggregate security holdings on December 1. They're going to start selling treasuries. The committee is strongly committed to supporting maximum employment, but they also announced at the same time that they don't know what they're going to do in December. They don't want to signal to the market there's going to be a deeper cut. And just to put this in perspective, this Federal Reserve rate that we're talking about, it was 5.3%, 5.5% in 2023 and 2024 during Joe Biden. And yet Joe Biden had a roaring economy. So Donald Trump's economy's in the trash. He's about to have a hearing next week on tariffs that's going to put his entire economic model at risk because he's been tariffing his way to collecting money in lieu of income tax from the wealthy. If that goes down the drain, then we're cooked. And Biden has to deal with a high interest rate, so not a lot of money in the market, but a roaring economy. Donald Trump's economy is not roaring, it's crying, and it needs help It needs to cut the interest rate almost in half. It says that's an indictment of the lack of ability for Donald Trump to run the economy. There's no wonder 63% of America believes that Donald Trump is doing a terrible job and reject his policies in the most recent polling. I'll continue to follow it all right here. You're on Wednesday on Legal AF. And I'm Michael Popok. Take a minute, hit the free subscribe button. Come over to Legal AF Substack, do the exact same thing. And if you can swing being a paid member for $6 or $7 a month, all the better. So until my next report, this is Michael. I'm Michael Popok, and I got some big news for our audience. Most of you know me as the co-founder of Midas Touch's Legal AF and the Legal AF YouTube channel, or as a 35-year national trial lawyer. Now, building on what we started together on Legal AF, I've launched a new law firm, the Popok Firm, dedicated to obtaining justice through compassionate and zealous legal representation. At the Popok Firm, we are focused on obtaining justice for those who have been injured or damaged by a life-altering event by securing the highest dollar recoveries. I've been tirelessly fighting for justice for the last 35 years, so my own law firm organically building on my Legal AF work just feels right. And I've handpicked a team of top-tier trial fighters and settlement experts throughout all 50 states known as big auto injury attorneys who have the know-how to beat heartless insurance companies, corporations, government entities, and their attorneys. Big Auto's attorneys working with my firm are rock stars in their respective states and collectively responsible for billions of dollars in recoveries. So if you or a loved one have been on the wrong side of a catastrophic auto, motor vehicle, rideshare, or truck accident, suffered a personal injury, or been the victim of medical malpractice, employment harassment or discrimination, or suffered a violation of your civil and constitutional rights, then contact the Popok Firm today at 1-877-POPOK-AF or by visiting my website at www.thepopokfirm.com and fill out a free case evaluation form. And if we determine that you have a case and you sign with us, we don't get paid unless you do. The Popok Firm, fighting for your justice every step of the way.